All right. Well, let's get started, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be talking about marketing in the metaverse. My name is Kent Lewis. I am Chief Marketing Officer of Anvil Dexia. For those of you that know me as the founder and president of Anvil, that changed March 1st when we merged Anvil with Dexia, a Midwest-based agency, to expand our service offerings to our clients. We've significantly grown our team, and yet I get to continue to speak and write and provide thought leadership as I love to do. So we're excited for that partnership. So today we want to talk about specifically how and why brands can engage in virtual worlds. We think it's a new and evolving discipline and an art, something that everybody can benefit from knowing and understanding. So let me just see if I want to make sure. It looks like I will record anyway, so that's good. I mean, my talking head here. So today we are going, and obviously you can see, you could follow me on Kent J. Lewis on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out. And then additionally, I am happy to provide any other background and connect. You can email me, Kent at Anvil Media. So a little bit about me before we get started. Founded Anvil in 2000, sold March 1st of this year. Well, technically we merged with Dexia. So we now have 4 offices in the West Coast and Midwest, 40 some odd employees and 150 some odd clients. So exciting to be a part of that family. I've also, since 2000, been an adjunct professor at Portland State. I teach have taught for over a decade a search engine marketing workshop. It's been suspended temporarily. Hopefully it comes back because I enjoy that. And also in '99, I founded PDX Mindshare. It's an online career community. You can find it at pdxmindshare.com. We also have a large LinkedIn group with over 11,000 members. I encourage you to join and subscribe to our monthly newsletter, get updates on jobs and events in the Pacific Northwest. And in 2006, I co-founded SEM PDX. Basically, it's a Portland-based organization for digital marketers, predominantly search marketers. Check out more information at sempdx.org. They have a big annual event called Engage you might want to check out. I write regularly for Smart Brief, and I speak regularly for Digital Summit. Tomorrow morning for 2 hours from 9 to 11, I'm teaching a SCORE social media marketing workshop. You can find out more at the Portland SCORE website or through my social feeds. It's great introductory, primarily for small business. In terms of relevance for NFT and the metaverse discussions, we just wrapped up a project for HP Enterprise on an NFT project with etched water bottles, creating an NFT around those, around sustainability, ironically. And we did our own fundraiser event, Paint the Future, an NFT mural event sponsored by our client First Tech last September. We're evaluating doing another one. We have a giant 30 by 60 foot mural in the back of our building celebrating racial diversity and equity in the city of Portland. And then we also originally I did a project for HP in Second Life back 14 years ago. I guess whatever 07 is, 13 years ago, 15 years ago. I can't do math, but it's reminiscent of a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. I want to start by defining the metaverse, why it matters to consumers and marketers. There are barriers to adoption to the metaverse. We'll talk about some success factors and then get into it. How do you join the metaverse? How do you market on the metaverse? What are brands doing today? I updated this deck as early as this morning because the metaverse is a Wild West, constantly changing entity. If you want to stay up on the metaverse and don't want to be flooded by my regular data feed on social or on Twitter in particular, follow PDX NFT Mural. That's our NFT Mural feed, and I only post NFT and metaverse related content there or repost it from the Kent Lewis feed. So that might be of interest to you. I'll go through a few resources and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A. So defining the metaverse. If you haven't read any Neil Stephenson, he writes very thick books that have some historical relevance, but are very technologically focused. And he wrote Snow Crash in '92, where the term metaverse was first vocalized or verbalized. And it's really stuck after that. I recommend his massive trilogy, Cryptonomicon, if you want to nerd out a little tech and a little history. He's a really gifted author. In short, what the metaverse is: a persistent online virtual environment incorporating a broad range of internet functions, blah, blah, blah. What that really means is it's a virtual world, okay? And there are, for a true virtual world, there are hardware and software requirements, like a headset, a VR headset. Typically, Oculus is the most popular, and some sort of motion tracking handheld devices to understand where you are in space. And sometimes there are cameras involved for true accuracy within a space. And then there are a bunch of different virtual worlds in which you can exist, communicate, collaborate, create content. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But that is what the metaverse is. You can complicate it if you want with NFTs and cryptocurrency, all built on the blockchain. But for now, what most people know as the metaverse is typically gaming platforms, to oversimplify. What are some of the elements? There will be currency if there's not already. That's kind of one of the barriers to entry and success, is having some sort of interchangeable, interoperable currency, some sort of marketplace and where to spend the currency, assets, or typically they will be NFTs or non-fungible tokens, or what you might buy and sell, whether they're avatar skins or actual physical product, or I should say virtual product, or deeds to physical product. Some sort of infrastructure, device, well, they're saying independence, but really you're device dependent right now, in that you have to have a big game system or a headset. But what they mean by independence is, can you access it through your phone? Right now, it's primarily through gaming. There are, the future will be events and entertainment, shopping. There will be the whole workplace idea of working remote that's COVID and supply chain resistant to blockages. Elements of social media, digital humans or virtual humans, or virtual influencers, etc. And then there's the usual AI, NLP, machine learning, jargon and nomenclature that will help us create a better future, theoretically. So why does the metaverse matter, particularly to marketers? That's who I'm typically talking to. And with these presentations, well, it's hot, right? It's taking the best of all technologies in theory and putting them in one place. So you have the blockchain underlying every asset, theoretically, and that can be tracked in the metaverse or the virtual worlds, some level of cryptocurrency, NFTs, and of course, the most popular entry point would be gaming. And there are some key players in the platform. Obviously, Facebook rebranded as Meta, and they have their own Horizon World. Sandbox has a platform. Microsoft has Mesh, and there's also Decentraland. These are the four biggest players in the non-gaming world. So these are specific virtual worlds that are the top players. Wall Street is eating it up with a spoon. They consider the whole metaverse or virtual worlds as the next big theme. Again, when you get a copy of this deck, these are hyperlinks to articles and resources or to the worlds themselves. You can also use something called Google and check all this stuff out for yourself. The benefit, of course, pandemic proof. It's supply chain restricted, resistant, and right now there is a potential for lowering the carbon footprint by lessening travel requirements. Although you have probably heard that minting NFTs and cryptocurrency is highly energy intensive, but they're probably not more than offset by travel in terms of the low energy parts of the metaverse. Right now, 64% of consumers are allegedly aware of the metaverse concept, and I think that's fine, but what does that mean? That research was from last week. And, so 2/3 or so are familiar with the concept. Doesn't mean that they have any intention of ever going there. So you can argue that sounds impressive. I would be more skeptical, honestly, of what that actually translates to. But that is a new data point. Another follow-on in terms of a recent survey of marketers and what they think of new tech, percentage find it important to be involved with each of these technologies. Cryptocurrency and AR lead the charge. So for marketers, talking about a currency is interesting. I do believe that AR has a far more valuable future for marketers than VR and the metaverse. That's just me. I think that NFTs and Web3 are right where they need to be in terms of popularity or importance for marketers in the future. only really half understand what it is, the metaverse that is. So this is timely. And then how companies plan to incorporate new tech. It's primarily joining virtual worlds in the metaverse, but that's less than a third, or hosting virtual events in VR, or getting to AR. Again, I don't make any money off saying this, but I believe AR is far more powerful with greater potential for a lot of reasons than VR. And that's because I was working in 07 with HP on a Second Life virtual reality implementation, and not much has changed since then. I am not impressed with how things have not evolved, frankly, in the last 15 years with VR, whereas AR is continuing to impress me with what you can do interacting real world, virtual world, with just a phone, and everybody has one, right? Just a camera and a GPS, and suddenly you're in the VR world or the AR world. I think that's interesting. So let's talk about that. So some of the barriers to adoption with the metaverse: massive lack of interoperability across the different platforms I've mentioned. So Microsoft and Meta and others are not really looking at a standards approach. That's going to have to happen here, but it may be 3 to 5 years out realistically. So until there's true interoperability, it's going to dramatically limit adoption, particularly for consumers. The hardware cost can be prohibitive to the average consumer that's not a gamer. So the headsets, $200, $300, $400 or more. Availability can be limited with supply chain issues. So the VR world, the metaverse that I think you're going to mostly see is gaming based, with just large computer screens, or even phone based, on the small screen, or in a cheap, affordable headset like a Google Cardboard. More on that later. I believe also in human nature. I don't think we're going to want to spend 2 to 3 hours wearing headsets to be in a virtual staff meeting or planning session if we don't have to. There's a comfort issue. There's a dizziness issue associated with those headsets. Development costs are significant for the virtual world because you're in 3 dimensions or 4 dimensions versus 2 dimensions. Only 38% of Gen Z is saying that they're pretty serious about it, or believe it's going to be a big thing. And they're going to be obviously the big adopters. There is a bigger issue you're seeing in the press more recently around security, privacy, and bad behavior out in virtual worlds, which is no different than it was in Second Life more than a decade ago. People behaving badly and groping virtually or misrepresenting who they are. This is classic human behavior, and why I think Meta and other platforms are not doomed, but they're just not going to get the adoption as quick as they want or need. Also for brands in particular, there's undefined tax and legal liability for assets that they're creating, behaviors that are happening in their worlds or with their products or items, virtual items. And there's a lack of ability, frankly, to police these DAO, these distributed platforms, due to the nature of this whole idea of decentralized. How do you police it? And there's no real authority. Also, again, I think the UX is largely lackluster for most of the platforms, especially Meta. If you look at the screenshot on the right, you can see, Mark Zuckerberg and his Zuckbucks and half a body, and it's like a Nintendo Wii from 15 years ago. Again, very underwhelming, frankly. The fact that they're allowing you to build your own elements and incorporate voice, that's great. But when the virtual world is that clunky and 1990s in appearance, I'm just not impressed personally. So you're going to hear I'm taking this whole metaverse with a grain of salt, but I'm still going to show you how to get there and why it matters. So what are the limitations of AR and VR? If you have a monocle, you can see that products are not user-friendly. There's a cost issue. Changes in tech is too fast-paced, limited knowledge. These are all statistically issues in addition to what I've outlined in this slide. So there are definitely barriers. But what are the success factors? Conversely, who's doing it well and how is that working? So I think if you can lower the barrier and use something like a $5 to $10 price point for a headset you can slide your phone into. I have probably 4 or 5 Google Cardboard headset boxes from the old days when they were just giving them away. Those are still a possible option for leveraging the rampant use of smartphones to create a VR experience. Anytime you can maximize seamlessness, so not requiring a headset or minimizing the use or providing the headset is great. The seamlessness simply means if I'm creating an experience that is not hard to install 2 different apps, buy some hardware, and now it's outdated, it needs to be painless as possible. The utility value aspect is important. So Nike has Nike Land in the Roblox world, and they have made it. They've done everything right. This actually links to the article. You can Google it today. I think it's an Ad Age or Ad Week. But the idea is that they have, no, it's in the Drum out of the UK. But it talks about what their success factors have been, keeping people coming back. They've had 7 million visitors to their virtual world Nike Land since they launched. That's compelling. That's a much bigger number than almost anywhere else. Nike has the horsepower to pull it off, and they have the view. In fact, you can see their trademark for their crypto kicks down the lower left. They were way ahead of the game in 2019 with their patent. And so I think in the end, their goal is to be able to have people create shoes digitally, and then Nike will manufacture them at some point, kind of next level Nike ID sort of thing. But the real value we're seeing in the metaverse is the ability to create and curate a community, particularly over time. So the value for the music and the arts industry is really that access, not to necessarily flex and own a piece of digital art that nobody else cares about, but actually getting access to a community. So buying a Top Shot Damian Lillard card gives me VIP access to his Discord group, basically an online community. That's of interest. Certain musicians, performers are giving VIP access to, front row at every concert, or virtual connectivity, backstage pass, virtual backstage pass. All of that is, I think, where the real value is. And then the commerce will follow. Create value and people will spend. Right now, a big challenge for brands is securing a plot of land, a 1x1 or larger, in Decentraland or Roblox or the Sandbox, a place where you can have a footprint and make an impact. But there are obviously challenges with building and maintaining that, which we'll talk about. This chart in the center I just got today, US VR headset users up through 2023. You're looking at about, today, there are about 30 million VR headset users. So that's a pretty good audience. But if you look at the numbers, then that means that Nike has a quarter of them in Nike Land. Not all of those are headset users. It's not all required, but you can get a sense of how small this audience really is right now. It's really, frankly, pathetically small for the amount of investment brands need to make to have a presence here. So that's kind of what's going on. You can see an article on the right from the Marketing Insider. Convergence of NFTs, brands, and influencers. So that's why we're talking today. All these things are coming together, as I mentioned. You can see these massively influential people are creating NFTs and updating their Twitter profiles accordingly. I have an NFT, etc. So more than a fad, but still early stage. So you're asking yourself, perhaps at this time, why is he telling me to get involved or not? If you're going to get involved, do it right. And here are some options that I would recommend. The starting point would be do your research first, understand each of the platforms. Easiest entry is, in my estimation or recommendation, is the gaming platforms. You got millions of people in Fortnite, millions of people playing Minecraft, millions of people on Roblox that are active all the time. So the hurdle has already been overcome because these people are already working and living and playing in these virtual worlds, versus trying to get people to go to your Meta Horizon world or your Microsoft Mesh world or your Apple down the road world, or separately, you have a footprint on Decentraland or Sandbox playing the real estate game, which again, I don't think was all that successful in Second Life. After the first year or two, people had virtual millionaires overnight building land in Second Life, and now I think it's like 800,000 people might be on there, down from a couple, 10 million in the peak. So there, you can also keep an eye on, if it's consistent with your brand, up and comers like Vibe, Blocktopia, High Street, and others, to say, I want to be in a space that makes sense for me. So I've seen some pretty janky implementations on Roblox like Vans, but I think that the Nike implementation is on point. Fortnite and Minecraft are more like collabs at this point. But you also have to test out, the software and particularly the hardware. Oculus or HoloLens are the two popular platforms right now. Others are launching their product lines as well for the headset and then the hand controllers. And then once you may reverse and have the crypto tail wag the dog and determine which crypto you think is going to win the game. If it's Ethereum versus Decentraland's Mana, MANA, or the Sand from Sandbox. Roblox has Robux, Mark has Zuckbucks allegedly in their Horizon world. So understanding what kind of customer you or consumer you want to engage with, and then may determine where are they, which platforms are they on, and then go learn those platforms and invest in the hardware. You might be in a couple $100 to get a sense of what's going on there, but always research first, go in smart, go in listening, spend your time appropriately. So create those accounts. Now, going deeper dive on some of these other non-gaming platforms. So Sandbox, you purchase your land in the Sandbox as NFTs. They're primarily the brand partnerships there that have been successful. Care Bears have been there for years. Gucci, Adidas, and Atari have done some great work there as well, generate a lot of awareness. Decentraland, so they're more decentralized focused for visually oriented brands like the Hugo Boss and Republique. And then Roblox is all about gaming. So it's marketers, there's a revenue-based fee for interactions or exchange of product. It has a corporate control versus decentralized like Sandbox and Decentraland. There are others like CryptoVals, it's up and coming. Odyssey is for the B2B world. OpenSea is your secondary market, which is rampant with fraud right now in terms of buying and selling land on Sandbox and Decentraland. Can be purchased on OpenSea, and there's a lot of difficulty in validating that land is real. On Rentable, you can actually rent space for your virtual pop-up events in the worlds like Sandbox or Decentraland without having to buy land, because it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars to purchase. But location still matters, even the virtual world, even the empty virtual world, even the goofy, awkward virtual world. You want to be in the proper place within those worlds. So again, spend the time, get to know them, talk to experts, and see where you should be renting or buying in these different platforms. So you can build or you can buy. If you're going to buy your way in, you can go to folks like Bidstack and look at advertising or sponsorship opportunities like virtual billboards. If you want to connect with in-world influencers, you can go to Post for Rent and try and work your way in there. You can also just collaborate with other brands directly on the popular platforms like Care Bears has done, or Nike or Vans. But the idea of just renting space to try an event out is helpful. You can see on the right, I asked this question a month or so ago. What are your plans regarding leveraging the metaverse? This is on a LinkedIn poll. And most people, 22% weren't sure what it was, half jokingly, but really they probably could put a gun to their head and they wouldn't be able to accurately describe what the metaverse is. Plan to do their own research, like on the coronavirus, or seriously evaluating, right? So almost nobody's doing anything. And that's reflected in a recent Portland Business Journal article where they interviewed some Portland businesses on theoretical uses of NFTs. And we've been in that world for over a year now. So, there's still not a clear knowledge of who's actually in these spaces right now. So if you're going to build something yourself, you're like, we want to go deeper than buying and renting. I mean, we're going to buy our way in or rent our way in. Then let's actually build something. So you can develop a whole suite of assets, including characters, chatbots, and on existing platforms, like using platforms like DMarket to create that content. That's what some of the big brands are doing. You could create a retail presence, buy some land and build on that land. Or you could even develop cross-platform avatars. Ready Player Me was used by Adidas to create cross-platform avatars for Adidas fans in their virtual world. Or you can build your flat out your own metaverse with Unity or SignSpace. So you can have your own dedicated virtual world. You'll have full control. The challenge is getting people there, much like any other. There are a lot of places to hang out on social media. Do you want to create another social platform? That's basically what you would be doing. But we are a big fan of looking at creating hybrid events that integrate online, offline channels. One of our friends in the space, which I have a future screenshot, that's what they did with Second Life back in 2006, is had Kia unleash one of their new cars virtually and then drove out into the physical world at a big event. I think it was CES. So that's being done for 15 years. It can be done again even better now. But whatever you do, don't forget to build the fundamentals into your marketing. It's traditional SEO for anything on your website or on the marketplaces. round it out with PR. That's going to give you that pump into those different publications and calendars around NFTs or metaverse events. Traditional advertising, advertising in platform or out of platform. And then of course, build your email list and market to those folks. Because if you can get a lot of traction early in a metaverse event or with an NFT launch, email lists are the best way to do that. So build and curate your email list so you can direct people quickly to your new ventures, your new projects. And then metaverse applications for brands. So what we're looking at here is what are people doing? So Lego right now is building their own child-friendly metaverse. So I mentioned utilizing Unity or ScienceSpace. Lego is building their own virtual world, basically, and that's something that you may be able to do, but obviously a brand like Lego, it makes total sense because a lot of these worlds are not kid-friendly remotely. Think chat rooms circa 1995, right? Pretty sketch. Brand engagement, brand perception. Those are the reasons Gucci has been out there making a big stink, as well as non-luxury brands like Chipotle, where you can roll your own burrito in their virtual world. Sounds terribly stupid to me, but if you're a Chipotle brand fan, then maybe this helps you appreciate the artistry behind making a burrito by doing it in a virtual world. I think it makes more sense to train their employees in the virtual world on how to roll a burrito, frankly, than their consumer, their customer. Otherwise, they may roll their own and stay home and not waste the money. Customer engagement. So there is you can see a screenshot of something called Praxi. This is a healthcare monitoring and tracking platform that's leveraging the metaverse and virtual worlds. That's like product extension. But you can also, just like the Ultraman collection, one of our friends, that's what they're doing, is extending out old Japanese comic book characters and shows and moving them into the metaverse with hybrid events, or just simply create a new application. So that Praxi is actually an example of a new application, but it could be considered product extension depending on what business you're already in. But most folks right now are looking to get into the metaverse with brand awareness, with some ads and collabs. Brand engagement, that's more what Nike Land is doing, and Chipotle with actual interactions and games and contests, promotions. Customer engagement not being done as clearly and as effectively, where people are buying and products are being supported in the virtual world. That's coming. But Nike has already thought 2-3 years ago about that product extension of moving their sneakers virtually and into the physical realm with their patents. So there's a lot of different opportunities here, and these are just a few of what the brands are doing right now. A couple more examples. You can see at top left is the Nike Land. So you can see it looks somewhere between Super Mario and Mario World and a legit Nike experience. You can get gear when you first enter, a hat or a backpack to add to your avatar. The main reason they do that is to track who's coming in and where they're and what kind of uptake they're getting. But you can add that. The Vans virtual world, I think, is underwhelming, but people might disagree. You can see the image bottom right of the Chipotle roll your own burrito. That's Roblox, so it has that Legos vibe to it. Doesn't that look delicious? And then the bottom left is Evian hired an artist to create some NFTs playing off this Swarovski, I'm sure I said it right at some point, the crystals. And it's a physical and digital asset, as I understand it, that's trying to emulate the idea that Evian gets their water from the Swiss Alps. And for those of you that aren't aware, Evian is naive spelled backwards. So take that all with a grain of salt. So what are the key takeaways in terms of metaverse marketing? Number one, the metaverse does provide a ton of opportunities for brands and marketers to build awareness, build engagement, product extension, new applications. But I would tend to look at what Nike's doing, and they're kind of leading the charge. Adidas is doing some amazing work as well. Those brands, I think, get it. Others are just, I think, making noise. Adoption is small today, and honestly, I'm predicting 2 to 5 years before you get significant critical mass in adoption, where you're actually doing business and not just doing marketing and playing. Evaluate the platforms that are out there based on your audience, your objectives. That's pretty straightforward. I feel it's always worth reminding. And create a value by enhancing the community, by creating content, create some sort of value, curate. But again, focus on community. That's brands that focus on community really get it, or they're seeing as getting it, particularly for the younger generations, where that is a key element. They've grown up practically in COVID, and virtual interactions is the norm. If you're not ready to build your own presence, consider a collab or renting your way in. You could say buying versus building, with advertising, marketing, billboards, virtual pop-up. Those are all options. And then don't forget the fundamentals when you're going to actually do some sort of metaverse event or have some sort of presence. Start building your email list today, back it with PR, do some basic advertising, use all the fundamentals to make your virtual launch that much more successful. So these are all some links to articles and resources related that I used in the research for this article. There are other links embedded. Again, we'll send attendees, registered attendees, a link to the deck that's going to be basically gated, and then we will post this recording up on our YouTube channel as well. So mentioned that you're going to get a recording, and look by the end of the week for the recording at LinkedIn, or I'm sorry, on YouTube. You can visit our insights section. We have a ton of information out there. And then our next webinar is going to be on conversion rate optimization and heat mapping. So if you're looking to get more value from your website, particularly if you're a B2B brand where lead gen is your focus, this webinar is for you. That's noon on the 11th of May. We are updating the site in the next 24, 48 hours, so you can register for that as well. And at any time, if you're ever interested in a free audit of your current online presence, myself or my team would be happy to share that with you. You can just go to anvilmedia.com and contact us, or email me, Kent@anvilmedia, to request the audit. And if you don't, in the next 48 hours, get some sort of link or information, feel free to email me and I'll make sure you get a copy of this deck and/or the recording out on YouTube. Do we have any questions before we wrap up? And thank you for those that attended. I'm happy to answer any questions before we call it a day and get you back to your lunch hour. All good. Let me end the slideshow and do this. I'm going to stop the screen share. And again, there are a ton of articles. And also I'm constantly tweeting them out at Kent J. Lewis, and also at pdxnftmural.org. That's another place to get the information. I don't see any questions in chat. Oh, just thank you, Amy. My pleasure. Appreciate you. If anybody else has any questions, I'll give you another second here. Otherwise, check out our website, and then email us if you don't get any information, Kent@AnvilMedia, in the next 48 hours or so. All right, well, I want to let us go here, get your rest of your day back. Thank you for attending, and we will be in touch. And hopefully I'll see you on May 11th. The team will be sharing conversion rate optimization. Thanks so much. Have a great day.